Hey everyone, welcome to Rancher Overview Training. Today we will be going through Rancher version 1.6.13. My name is my name is Kanara Shah. I'm a software engineer here at Rancher Labs, and I'll be joined by Denise, who will be answering all your questions today. So the key topics that we'll be going through today is a technical introduction to Rancher and its basic features. We'll definitely keep the slides to a minimum. After this, we only have a couple of slides, and then it's just going to be demo. As always, questions are welcome. In your Go webinar control panel, you'll be able to find the questions options, so keep them coming. And the demo is only like 30 to 40 minutes long, but we won't leave until all of the questions are answered. So before starting the training, I would like to go through the primary resources which will help you after the training. So first of all, our docs, they are pretty exhaustive and they contain all the configurations and options that you would want to look for. A more interactive way of accessing our information is our forums, where you'll find a lot of our community users as well as our engineers, and you can ask your questions there. You'll also find announcements and general information there. A more interactive form would be our Slack. Again, all of our engineers are present there, so you can ask your questions. Also, we have channels dedicated to specific topics. So, if you have a question regarding some specific topic, you can access those channels. So the key topics that we'll be covering today is setting up a Rancher server, setting up access control to your server so nobody else can access your server, creating environments, attaching private registries, adding resources, host, stack, and services, load balancers. It's okay if you don't understand all of these topics right now. I'll walk through them each and when we add them in the UI. And there are a couple of ways we can access our Rancher server, like UI, API, CLI. So I'll be talking about them. I'll also give you a brief introduction about Rancher catalogs and how to add them, and I'll show you how to set up a Kubernetes environment. I won't be interacting much with the Kubernetes setup because we have a specific training dedicated to that, but I'll show you how to at least set it up. So going to our Rancher server, here are the different options that you can see in our docs, and there are a lot of them on how you can set up your Rancher server. But basically, if you just have an Ubuntu platform which just supported Docker, it's going to be good enough. If it is an unsupported version, it's still going to work, but it's not really tested, and it's going to show up in the UI as unsupported. So here I have my Rancher server already set up with version 1.6.13, and as you can see I have two hosts already active and running with labels demo is equal to true. I'll later on show how to add them, but first of all you can see there's an exclamation point here which is like just going to stay till we have access control set up. So first let's go ahead and set up access control. You can see there are multiple options available here. All of them have been documented. You can choose whichever one you prefer, but today I'm just going to use local auth. So I'm going to set up an account for me. And once you enable local auth, it's going to automatically log you in and you'll be signed in as an admin and you'll get the full control of the server. So as you can see, I'm signed in as an admin. You can add more accounts and under manage accounts here, or you can find accounts under the admin tab. So I'm going to add one more account for Denise. And you can see there are two type of accounts that we have available, user and admin. I'm just going to give this a user role and create. So now we can see two accounts here. We also have audit log. So once you have your auth set up, you will be able to see how different users are interacting with the server. You will see all the different events, the descriptions, in which environment it is taking place, resource type, and such. You'll also be able to look for processes. Right now, we don't have anything running, but if it's running, you'll be able to see the start time, the run time, ready processes, delayed processes, and this is really helpful when you want to troubleshoot and debug what is going on your server. We currently don't have an HA setup, but if we did, we would have been able to see advertised addresses, ports, and UUID. Machine drivers are the different kind of hosts that you can add. Right now, since you're an admin, you'll be able to see like all the hosts here, and you can add them using the host screen. So going back to our host screen, which is under infrastructure host and adding host. When I go to add host, again, there are a lot of options available. Here you'll be able to find the machine drivers that we just saw under the admin tab. And if you have just a machine with supported version of Docker, Rancher has a command ready. All you have to do is just copy paste it and it will show up on the host screen. Today I'm going to show how to add a DigitalOcean host. So all you need is your access token. Let me pull that for you. And here is my access token. And we'll give it some name. You have and then you have to give different configurations which are necessary, and you can add the label. So the label that we saw demo is equal to true could be added in here, and once you create it is going to show up in the UI. So it will essentially show you all the steps that it does for connecting the host to the server. What it does is it starts a Rancher agent, and the Rancher agent passes its credentials to the server, authenticates itself so that your host is connected. It takes a couple of minutes to actually complete the process. So right now I'm just going to delete this since we already have two hosts ready. So we have our two hosts here. I'm going to talk a bit about the environments first. So an environment is our way of isolating resources. Resources could be our host, our services, our infrastructure resources, and which are owned by like one or more groups or users. So and each environment is now defined by an environment template. You can see we have a couple of environments templates already there, but if you go to add template, you'll be able to see how to create a template. So it has a couple of orchestration engines that you can select: applications, external DNS services, infrastructure services, networking, and storage. So just for example, I'm going to create a Rancher NFS template, and I'm going to select NFS under storage. And as you can see, it's going to ask you for your configuration options. So I'm going to pull the IP address of my NFS server. The export base directory which we have set up, I have currently set it up as NFS. And once you could click on configure and create, it's going to create a template called Rancher NFS. So now creating an environment becomes very easy. All you have to do is add environment, give it a name. The templates that you created is going to show up here. So select the Rancher NFS. Since we already have access control up and running, you'll be able to add different users and give them different roles, which will give different permissions to them. So right now, as an admin, I'm already have been given the default role of owner. Let's add Denise to it, and you can see a couple of roles. The other roles that show up are member, owner, read only, restricted. All these roles and the permissions have been defined in the docs, but like it's pretty intuitive that if a user is read only, you will be only able to read the information and you won't be able to create, update, or delete a host. So once you go and create the environment, it's going to show up here under all the environments. And when you go to NFS demo, it's going to say that you don't have a host ready because you don't have a host. And but under infrastructure stacks, you'll be able to see that the NFS has been added. We're not going to work with like this environment, so I'm just going to go back to default. And here you can see we have our two hosts as we had before. Under stacks, we have two kind of stacks: the user stacks and infrastructure stacks. So the infrastructure stacks are the ones that have been set up by Rancher to do all the plumbing work, and they're already active once you add your host. So for each of them, health check is going to ensure, like, just check that the communication between your host is active. Under this containers tab, you'll be able to see if there's something going wrong. You will see the state getting changed, and you can get more information under view logs. IPsec handles all the networking part. The network services has metadata, DNS, network manager. And scheduler is going to schedule your services and hosts based on the different labels that you give. I'll show that once we go ahead and create a service. So this was the infrastructure stack, and under user stack, we don't currently have anything, so I'm just going to add a sample stack. I'm going to call it blog, and once you create, you can add a service which is Ghost. So right now I'm just going to create a working stack, and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to create one more stack, and I'll show you how each of these options work. So I'm giving it a name Ghost, and then the image is Ghost. And you can see an option here which says always pull image before creating. So let's say you are testing your image, you're going to make a couple of changes and then you're going to come back and recreate the service. You would want to select this option so that it pulls in your latest changes. Port map, so this particular blog, I'm going to give it 2368 and 2368. Right now, both are same, but what it means is public host port is the port through which your public accesses the internet, and it is routed to a private container port on 2368. These are the different options that Rancher provides for running a service. So in the command, you can just give the command that you want to run on starting up of your container. Currently, we don't have any volume drivers, but these are the different volume. Here you can add your different volumes. Networking, you can select different network modes, bridge, host, none, all of which again have been documented in our docs. You can add different security and host options. You can add secrets. Health check, you can enable your health check for the service. So right now it's none, but if you go to like HTTP, you can give it an endpoint of your container, which is going to run to determine the health of your service. You can add different labels here again for service, and you can add scheduling options. So for scheduling role, we have different fields on which you can give key value pairs to run your service against. Right now, I'm just going to use a host label of demo is equal to true. And as you see, we right now are running only one container, so it's going to select one of the hosts to run it. So here, if you see the health check option, I enabled the HTTP, but I didn't really give it a port or a request, which is required. So I'm just going to go back to none and create the service. While it takes some time to come up, I'm just going to add one more stack. So when you go to create a stack, it's going to show here no services. So what it tells you is a stack is like a group of services. Now if I go and add one more service, it's going to ask for the scale of containers. So a service is a group of containers. I'm going to run that for like 8 containers. I'll give this image of one of my coworkers, which what it does is it is going to tell you which container it is running. Since we now have 8 containers, we'll be able to see different container IDs coming up. So I'm giving it the name, and again for labels, I'm going to give it demo is equal to true and create. So now if you go to your host, you'll be able to see that it has selected to run 5 of our containers here, 3 of our containers here, since both of them have the labels demo is equal to true. And you can also see at what state they are in, like they are in the activating mode, but your blog stack is already up and active. So let's go and check the ghost, and you'll be able to see that it's active. Even for Nginx, it says it is active, so you'll be able to see that all the containers are running. Since we have like a couple of containers running, what I can do is I can add a load balancer. So for example, here is where you add your load balancer. You can give it two different kind of rules. So right now, if you want to select any of the service, you can select under different stacks and give it the target and a port. But you can also add a selector rule. So let's say if you had given some labels to service and you wanted to load balance between the services with a particular label, you can go to your selector rule and give it the key value pair that you want for the service. So right now I'm just going to create it for Nginx and while it is activating, let's see what else we have under the infrastructure tab. So we already saw host. We have different information about all the containers which are present. So we have IP addresses on host which is running and the command if you have given them. We have storage options. Right now we don't have any, but like later on I'll go on and show you how to add a storage driver. We have secrets. You can add secrets here. You can add certificates. So let's say if you have a load balancer and you want to add SSL certs, you can add your certificates here. Again, right now it's if you want to add HTTPS, you can add your certificates here. You can also add your private registries. So if you go to add registry option, you have different options like pulling your images from Docker Hub, Quay, or you can also just have a custom address with your URNAME and password. And if you go to create, it's going to pull up images for you, and you can it's going to pull up images for you, and you can use them. So that was about registry. Let's go and see if our LB is running. So yep, it's up. So if you just select this board, you'll be able to see that Nginx is running. And if I give it the endpoint where you'll be able to see the container IDs, this is the first container ID here. So what the load balancer does is it round robins for all the containers. So if I refresh this, you are going to be able to see the other container ID. And this is how the load balancer is working. So right now we have always been like adding stacks and everything using just the UI. But if you wanted to use the CLI, you can see here there's an option for downloading CLI, and you can download based on your OS. What it does is it downloads a zip file for you, and if you unzip it, opens up the binary file. So I already have that here open, and it helps to just start with the help function, which will tell you all the commands that we have with our CLI. So basically, you can create, update, and all the operations that you can do on stack services as well as host. But before, for authenticating CLI against Rancher server, you have to give it some config files. So to give that, you have to do just config, and it's going to ask you for all the necessary configurations that are required. So under UI and API, you'll be able to generate keys which will be used for giving that in the config. So if I go to add account API key and create it, it's going to give you an access and secret key that you can use. So let's go ahead and give those configs to the Rancher config. This is my URL, my access key, and my secret key. Once this is done, it's going to show all the environments that are available, and I'm just going to right now select the default environment, and it's going to save the config. So next time, all you have to do is just run the command, and it's going to give you details about this particular default environment. So for example, if I do PS, it's going to show all the services that we have and with their corresponding health states, scales, and image information. I would like to talk a bit about the catalogs. So we have two kind of catalogs, library and community. Library catalogs are the ones that have been provided by Rancher, and they are Rancher certified. They're basic infrastructure services that you might want to use. And community catalogs are the catalogs which have been contributed by community. So we have a very active community, and you can see there are a lot of catalogs here. We'll be adding more, but what all of them they're pretty easy to use, and if you go to just any of them, you will be able to see that it will just ask you for the config options, and then it's once you have done that, it's just like one launch thing, and it will be running. But what makes it more powerful is that you can also add your own catalogs. So the catalogs can be added at two different levels, environment as well as global catalogs. If you want to add environment catalogs, you have to go under manage, and here click on add catalog. You'll be just give it a name, a git fetchable URL from what branch do you want to fetch it from, and save. If you want to add a global catalog, the option is under admin settings, and you'll be able to see an option here to add catalog with the same parameters. And if you save it, you'll be able to see them under catalog all. So for just for an example, I'm going to add Rancher NFS here. And if you remember, like we have already done this before when I was adding an environment, but let's say you forgot adding NFS during creation of an environment, catalog becomes very handy and you can now just give the same parameters that I gave before, and it's going to still show up under our infrastructure stacks. It is getting up. So once this NFS is active, I'll be creating a user stack to use this NFS. So I would go here and create an NFS stack. And again, you can either get a Docker Compose files here, you can either create it through UI, or you can also use the Docker Compose files to create it using the CLI option that we saw before. So for example, this is the persistent storage information under infrastructure stacks on our docs. I'm going to pull this Docker Compose YAML information here, and I'm going to add TTY true so that like when we create the container, we'll be able to exec into the container. And I'm going to paste this here and create. So this is how you would use the Docker Compose to create it in UI. Let's say if you just wanted to create it in UI. So for that, I'm going to call it Fudu, and you can see here that we use the image busybox. So give it an image busybox, and we added volume options. So which is there in the UI here. The volume driver that we used was Rancher NFS, and you can add the volume, which as you can see is bar. So what it essentially does is that it used the Rancher NFS driver. It created a volume bar, and it is mounted to the container, and it is mounted to this container endpoint where lib storage. So if I go ahead and create it, and we also added tty is equal to true. This command is already like by default enabled in UI. So all I have to do is create. And we saw, okay, while this is coming up, I can show you, I was talking about community catalogs. So here is our repo for community catalogs. As you can see, there are a lot of them which have been supported. So if you, maybe if you want to contribute, or if you just want to see how this works, here is where you'll be able to see the config YAML files. And if you go to either of them for different versions, you'll be able to see the Rancher Compose and Docker Compose YAML files. Okay, so this is active, and what I'm going to do is, since now we have two containers which both share the mount point, I'm going to go into one of these containers and create a directory, and you should be able to find that into the other container just to see that NFS is running. So let's go to food. Just for example, again, this is our NFS stack. Here are our services, and now we go into one of our containers, and you'll be able to exec here. So if you go to the mount point cd where lib storage, and you do, I created a test directory, and now if you go to your Fudu, you should be able to find it there. So cd where lib storage, and it's present here. And so this is how you would use catalogs to add a particular service and then use it in your user stack. We went to the infrastructure options, the admin options API. I'm going to show you now how to create a Kubernetes environment. So again, going to manage environments where we were before, Kubernetes environment template is already set up for you. So all you have to do is go to add environment, select the environment template as Kubernetes, and I'm going to call it Kubernetes. Again, as we saw before, like access control, just walking through it again. So all together, and I'm just going to create the environment. So now if you go to Kubernetes, it's going to show that it's trying to add at least one host, like which makes sense because it needs at least one host for containers to be running. And because so I already have a demo kit set up with a host ready to show what it does. So here you can see that I have a host. Here you'll be able to see all the stacks and services as we saw before. And if you go to infrastructure stacks, you will see that Rancher has already set up all the services that are needed for running Kubernetes. So it's super easy. All you have to do is go add an environment and all the services are already there. And even for the CLI option, we have your kubectl here in the UI. You can either go to host, SSH into your host, and generate a config here and use that to access the kubectl, or you can just do it here and you'll be able to see that it's there. We also have Helm set up here, so you have to do help and you'll be able to see Helm here. Again, I won't be going into much detail here because like we have a whole separate training and the link is here which you can use to access our Kubernetes training. And if you want to play with just a simple Rancher setup, you can go to tryrancher.com and wait. I guess we are done accessing all the basic features. Denise, do you have any questions that like you want to?
No, I don't have any questions.
So I think we are.
I guess if anyone has any questions on something that you would like Kanar to go over in more detail, you can, the little question section in the GoToWebinar on the side, you can go and access. But I didn't get any questions throughout the training, so I think everyone was able to follow quickly along. We do post these recordings online, so if Kanar went through something a little faster than you were able to follow, you can go watch the recording again later. They are usually on our YouTube. We do host these trainings about once a month, so if you have any questions, feel free to come back and attend another one. I will leave it open for a couple more minutes just to see if any questions come in. I haven't seen any, so I don't know if that means everyone understood everything or if they're just still trying to process it, but I'll leave it open for just a little bit longer, and then otherwise we'll call it a day.